The debate hall had a particular kind of silence, the kind that pressed against your eardrums like atmospheric pressure before a storm. I stood at my podium, notes crisp beneath my fingers, and felt Julian's gaze slice across the room like a scalpel through silk. He was beautiful in the way winter was beautiful, all sharp edges and crystalline perfection that warned you not to touch. His suit was immaculate, charcoal gray with subtle pinstripes that probably cost more than my entire semester's textbook budget. When he spoke, that voice rolled out like aged whiskey over ice, smooth and dark and impossibly controlled. "Mr. Hayes makes an interesting point," Julian said, and the way he said interesting made it sound like an insult wrapped in velvet. If by interesting we mean fundamentally flawed in its premise. The room exhaled. Someone snickered. I kept my expression neutral, but my pulse quickened. Not from anger, though that's what I told myself. "Mr. Castellane seems to confuse confidence with correctness, a common mistake among those who've never been challenged." His lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. "Then by all means, Hayes, challenge me." That was us. That had always been us. Julian Castellane and Noah Hayes, the beautiful enemies, as the underclassmen whispered. We were the twin pillars of Ashford University's debate team, ranked first and second respectively, though the order changed depending on the week. He had the pedigree, the money, the kind of effortless brilliance that came from private tutors and European boarding schools. I had the scholarship, the hunger, and the kind of stubborn determination that came from knowing this was my only shot. In public, we were ice and fire. Sarcastic smiles across seminar tables, subtle digs disguised as academic discourse, silent competitions that made professors lean forward in their chairs, eager to see who would draw blood first. I told myself I hated him. I told myself his arrogance grated on every nerve. I told myself I didn't lie awake at night replaying the way his voice dropped half an octave when he was about to deliver a killing blow in argument, the way his long fingers gestured with surgical precision, the way his eyes, so dark they were almost black, would lock onto mine with an intensity that made my stomach twist. That was 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks before the rain. 3 weeks before everything shattered. The rain started at dusk, turning the campus into a watercolor painting bleeding at the edges. Most students had fled to their dorms, umbrellas blooming like dark flowers across the quad. But I'd stayed late in the debate hall, rehearsing for the regional competition. The room was mine after hours, or so I thought. The building had that peculiar emptiness that comes after dark, when fluorescent lights buzz too loud and every footstep echoes. I was packing my notes when I heard it. A sound. Not the rain drumming against windows, not the old pipes groaning. Something else. Something human. Crying. Soft, broken, muffled, like someone was trying desperately to hold it in and failing. It was coming from the storage room at the end of the hall, where we kept old trophies and unused podiums. The door was cracked open, spilling a sliver of dim light across the polished floor. I should have walked away, should have minded my business, should have remembered that Julian Castellane, because somehow I knew it was him, would eviscerate me for witnessing any moment of weakness. But my feet moved anyway. I pushed the door peacefully open, and the scene before me rewrote everything I thought I knew. Julian was on the floor. Not sitting gracefully, not posing. Collapsed. Knees drawn up, shoulders curved inward like he was trying to fold himself small enough to disappear. His perfectly styled hair fell across his forehead in disarray. His tie was loosened, hanging crooked against his white shirt. And his face, God, his face! Tears had carved tracks through what I now realized was the faintest touch of concealer under his eyes. His mascara, he wore mascara, had smudged, creating dark shadows that made him look less like the Ice Prince and more like a Renaissance painting of tragedy. His hands were shaking. The storage room smelled like old wood and dust and something expensive, his cologne,
that same scent I'd caught in passing 100 times, now mixed with salt and rain from his tear-soaked suit. "Julian?" His head snapped up. Those dark eyes, usually so controlled, were wild with panic. For a heartbeat, I saw him consider running, saw him calculate the social cost of this moment, saw him reach for the mask he always wore. But something in him was too broken to hold it. "Leave!" His voice cracked on the word, that smooth, dark voice I'd heard dismantle opponents with surgical precision, now fractured like thin ice. Just fucking leave, Hayes." I should have listened, should have given him the dignity of privacy. Instead, I closed the door behind me and sat down on the floor beside him. "What are you—" He tried to pull away, but there was nowhere to go. His back was already against the wall. I didn't say anything, didn't ask questions. I just reached out and wrapped my arms around him.
Julian froze. Every muscle in his body went rigid, like he'd forgotten how to be touched. For a moment, I thought he'd shove me away, spit something venomous, rebuild the ice wall between us. Then he shattered completely. He turned into me, pressing his face against my shoulder, and clung with a desperation that stole my breath. His fingers twisted in my jacket like I was the only solid thing in a tilting world. The sound that tore from his throat wasn't the careful, controlled crying from before. It was raw and ugly and human in a way I'd never heard from him. "I'm sorry," he gasped between sobs. I'm sorry. I can't do this anymore." "Shh." I held him tighter, one hand moving to cradle the back of his head. His hair was softer than I'd imagined. "You don't have to apologize. Not to me." The rain hammered against the windows, the fluorescent light buzzed, and Julian Castellane fell apart in my arms. I don't know how long we stayed like that. Long enough for my legs to go numb, long enough for his breathing to slow from ragged gasps to shuddering inhales, long enough for the warmth of his body to seep through my clothes and settle somewhere dangerous near my heart. Finally, he spoke. That smooth voice was hoarse now, scraped raw. "My father called tonight." I waited. "The company's bankrupt. Everything's gone. The house, the cars, the fucking country club membership. All of it. He wanted me to know that I'm on my own now, that I should have studied business instead of wasting time with words." He pulled back just enough to look at me, and the expression on his face made my chest ache. "I'm going to lose my scholarship, Noah. One more tuition payment, and I'm done. I'll have to withdraw." The way he said my name, not Hayes, not my surname with that mocking inflection, but Noah, sent electricity down my spine. "No," I said, surprised by the steel in my own voice. "You're not. You don't understand." "I understand perfectly." I reached up and wiped a tear from his cheek with my thumb. His skin was fever warm. "You are the best debater this school has ever seen. You're brilliant and ruthless, and you push me harder than anyone ever has. You're not going anywhere." Something flickered in his eyes, something dark and desperate and dangerous. "Why do you care?" he whispered. "Because watching you is the best part of my day, because your voice does things to me I don't have words for, because seeing you broken on this floor just rewrote my entire understanding of want. Because we're rivals," I said, "and I need you to stay so I can finally beat you." His laugh was wet, surprised. Then he did something that stopped my heart. He leaned forward, pressed his face into the curve of my neck, and breathed me in like I was oxygen. "Don't let go," he whispered against my skin, and the feeling of his lips moving there sent heat pooling low in my stomach. His breath was warm. His weight against me was perfect. The scent of him, expensive cologne mixed with rain and salt, was intoxicating. "I won't," I promised, and wrapped my arms around him tighter. "I've got you." That night, we stayed in that storage room until the rain stopped and dawn crept through the windows. Julian told me everything, about his tyrant father who'd built an empire on cruelty and lost it through greed, about the pressure to be perfect that had been crushing him since childhood, about the loneliness of being untouchable, about the fear that without his family's money, he was nothing. And I held him through all of it, this broken boy who everyone thought was made of ice, and felt something shift irrevocably in my chest. When we finally stood to leave, his hand caught mine. "Noah? Yeah? Thank you." He squeezed my fingers once, and even though his eyes were still red-rimmed and his suit was wrinkled, there was something new in his expression, something intense, something that made my pulse race. I didn't know it then, but that was the moment everything changed. That was the moment I became his. The days after that night felt like living in two different realities. In public, nothing changed. Julian and I still traded barbs across seminar tables, still competed for the highest marks, still made the room hold its breath when we faced off and practiced debates. But now there were moments, small, secret moments, where the mask slipped. A glance that lasted half a second too long, his hand brushing mine when he passed me papers, the way he'd pause mid-sentence if I walked into a room, like he'd forgotten what he was saying. I caught him watching me, a lot, and God help me, I watched back. It had been 4 days from the storage room, 4 days since I'd held him while he fell apart, 4 days since I'd made a decision I hadn't told him about yet. I'd taken a part-time job at a bookstore near campus. The pay was decent, and combined with my savings from summer work, I'd have enough to pay Julian's tuition anonymously, enough to make sure he could stay. I told myself I was doing it because the debate team needed him, because the competition would be less without him, because it was the right thing to do. I told myself a lot of lies in those days. The truth crashed into me on Thursday night when I found him waiting outside my last class. He was leaning against the wall, scrolling through his phone with studied casualness, but his eyes flicked up the moment I stepped into the hallway. That dark gaze locked onto me with an intensity that made my breath catch. "Hayes." He pocketed his phone and fell into step beside me. "Walking home? Since when do you care about my walking habits?" "Since never. I'm simply going the same direction." We both knew his apartment was the opposite side of campus.
We walked in silence for a while, the late autumn air crisp against our faces. Other students passed us, and I wondered what they saw. The beautiful enemies still playing their game, or something else entirely. "I wanted to thank you," Julian said finally, his voice low, "for the other night, for not—" He paused, jaw tightening. "For not treating me like I was broken." "You weren't broken. You were human." He laughed, but it was strained. "Isn't that the same thing?" We'd reached the old humanities building, the one they were renovating next semester. It was empty now, scaffolding wrapped around it like a skeleton. Julian stopped walking and turned to face me. In the fading light, he looked different, softer somehow, despite the sharp lines of his face. His tie was loosened. I noticed he'd stopped wearing it so tight lately. His hair fell across his forehead in a way that made my fingers itch to push it back. "I need to tell you something," he said. "Okay. I've been thinking about what you said, about staying, about—" He took a breath, and I watched his chest rise and fall beneath his shirt. "I don't know how to do this, Noah." There it was again, my name in that voice. "Do what?" "Let someone see me." He stepped closer, and suddenly the air between us felt charged. "I've spent my entire life being what my father wanted, being perfect, being untouchable, and then you—" His hand came up, fingers hovering near my face like he wasn't sure he had permission to touch. "You held me while I cried and didn't ask for anything in return." "I didn't need anything in return. That's the problem." His fingers finally made contact, brushing along my jaw with a touch so light it could have been imagined. My heart was hammering. His hand was warm against my skin. We were standing too close, close enough that I could see the exact moment his gaze dropped to my mouth. "Julian!" "Tell me to stop," he whispered, leaning in. "Tell me this is a mistake and I'll walk away. I'll put the walls back up and we can go back to being rivals and nothing else." I should have pulled back, should have remembered all the reasons this was complicated, should have protected us both from whatever this was becoming. Instead, I reached up and covered his hand with mine,
pressing his palm more firmly against my face. "Don't stop." The sound he made, half relief, half desperation, went straight through me. Then he was kissing me, not gentle, not careful, like he had been starving for this and finally had permission to take. His other hand fisted in my jacket, pulling me closer, and I went willingly, pressing him back against the building's brick wall. He tasted like coffee and something sweet, and when I deepened the kiss, he made another sound, softer this time, almost vulnerable, that made me want to devour him completely. His fingers tangled in my hair. Mine found his waist, sliding beneath his jacket to feel the heat of him through his shirt. Every nerve ending I had was on fire. Every thought that wasn't more and Julian and mine burned away to nothing. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, his eyes were blown wide and his lips were kiss-swollen and red. "Julian," he breathed, and the way he said it, like a prayer, like a plea, like a promise, made something possessive unfurl in my chest. "Yeah? I don't want to go back." His hands were still twisted in my jacket, holding me close. "I don't want to pretend anymore. I don't want to be ice." I leaned my forehead against his and felt him shudder. "Then don't. Everyone will talk. Let 'em. It'll be complicated. I know. His voice cracked slightly. "I'm probably going to be terrible at this, at being open, at being someone's—" I kissed him again, softer this time, gentle. "We'll figure it out." He pulled back just enough to look at me, and the expression on his face was so raw it hurt. "Promise me something. Anything. Don't give up on me." His fingers tightened in my jacket. "Even when I'm impossible, even when the walls go back up, don't—" He swallowed hard. "Don't let me disappear." I thought about the boy on the storage room floor, about the way he'd clung to me like I was the only solid thing in a tilting world, about the decision I'd already made to save him, even if he never knew. "Never," I said, and meant it with everything in me. He kissed me again, and this time it was different, slower, deeper, like he was trying to memorize my taste, my feeling, like he was afraid this moment might vanish if he didn't hold on tight enough. When we finally pulled apart, the sky had gone dark and the campus lights had flickered on. Julian's hair was messed up from my fingers, his tie was even more crooked, and there was something in his eyes that looked almost like hope. "Walk me home?" he asked, and his voice had that vulnerability again, that soft note that made my chest ache. "Always." He took my hand, right there where anyone could see, and laced our fingers together. His palm was warm against mine, and I could feel his pulse racing in his wrist. As we walked through campus, I caught a few stares, whispers, the beautiful enemies, no longer enemies at all. Julian's grip on my hand tightened just slightly, and I squeezed back. I didn't know it then, but that walk home was the last simple moment we'd have, because the next morning, Julian would discover what I'd done, and everything would shift from tender to obsessive. Everything would become dangerous. But in that moment, with his hand in mine and the taste of him still on my lips, I was just happy, just hopeful, just his. I paid his tuition on a Tuesday. The bursar's office was cold and impersonal, all fluorescent lights and beige walls and tired staff who'd processed 1,000 transactions just like mine. I filled out the anonymous payment form, checked the box for gift aid, and tried not to think about how my bank account was now essentially empty. It was worth it. He was worth it. I told myself it was just practical, that losing Julian would hurt the debate team's chances at regionals, that this was an investment in our collective success. More lies. The truth was simpler and more terrifying. I couldn't bear the thought of him leaving, couldn't bear the idea of campus without his sharp wit across seminar tables, his dark eyes finding mine across crowded rooms, his presence that had somehow become as essential as breathing. The payment would post in 24 hours. Julian would receive a notice that his account was settled, that he could continue his studies. He'd never know it was me. That was the plan, anyway. I found out the plan had failed when Julian cornered me in the library 3 days later. I'd been researching for my thesis, buried in a corner table with textbooks stacked around me like a fortress. The library was nearly empty. It was Friday night, and most students had better places to be. Noah. I looked up to find Julian standing over me, and the expression on his face made my stomach drop. He looked different. His eyes were too bright, too intense. His jaw was tight. There was something coiled in his posture, like a spring wound to breaking point. "Hey," I said carefully, "what's—" "I know what you did." My heart stopped. "What?" He pulled out the chair across from me and sat down with controlled precision. When he spoke, his voice was that smooth, dark register that usually preceded a verbal evisceration. The anonymous payment, the tuition that mysteriously got settled, the generous benefactor the bursar's office wouldn't name. "Julian, it was you." Not a question, a statement. His gaze pinned me in place. "Wasn't it?" I could have lied, should have lied, but something in his expression, that raw, desperate intensity, made the denial die in my throat. "Yes." The word hung between us like a confession. Julian was silent for a long moment, and I watched a dozen emotions flicker across his face. Shock, disbelief, something that might have been anger, then something else entirely. "Why?" His voice had gone quiet, dangerous. "Why would you do that?" "Because you deserve to stay, because you're brilliant and—" "No." He leaned forward, and the movement brought him close enough that I could smell his cologne. "The real reason, Noah." My mouth went dry. Around us, the library was silent except for the hum of fluorescent lights and the distant sound of pages turning. "Because I couldn't let you go," I admitted. "Because the thought of you leaving made me feel like I couldn't breathe. Because I swallowed hard. Because you matter to me, more than I know how to say." The look on his face changed. The anger, if it had been anger, melted into something else, something dark and possessive, and almost frightening in its intensity. "Do you understand what you've done?" he asked softly. "I helped you stay in school." "No." He reached across the table and caught my hand, his grip almost painful. "You've made yourself necessary to me. You've shown me that someone in this world actually gives a damn whether I exist or disappear." His thumb traced across my knuckles, the touch at odds with the steel in his voice. "Do you have any idea how dangerous that is?" My pulse was racing. "Dangerous how?" His lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. "Because now I know what it feels like to be cared for, to be seen, and I'm never going to be able to let that go, to let you go." He stood up abruptly, still holding my hand, and pulled me up with him. Before I could process what was happening, he was leading me through the stacks, deeper into the library, to a section that no one ever used, old periodicals from the 1800s, dusty and forgotten. Then he pushed me back against the shelves and kissed me like he was trying to brand me. It was nothing like the gentle kiss outside the Humanities building. This was claiming, consuming. His hands framed my face, holding me exactly where he wanted me, and his tongue swept into my mouth with devastating precision. I groaned and pulled him closer, my hands finding his waist, feeling his heart hammering against my palms through his shirt. When he pulled back, we were both breathing hard. His eyes were wild, pupils blown wide with something that looked almost like fever. "You paid for me. You sacrificed for me. Do you know what that means? It means I care about you. It means you're mine." His hand slid up to cup the back of my neck, possessive and sure.
It means I'm never letting anyone else have your attention, your time, your—" His gaze dropped to my mouth. "Your touch." Something in his tone should have warned me, should have set off alarm bells, but I was too far gone, too drunk on the taste of him, too desperate for more. "Julian, say it," he demanded. "Say you're mine."
I should have hesitated, should have questioned the intensity, the possessiveness in his voice, should have recognized the shift from grateful to obsessive. Instead, I pulled him back into a kiss and whispered against his lips, "Yours." The sound he made was triumph and relief and something darker, all woven together. Then he was kissing me again, and his hands were everywhere, and I was drowning in him, in the heat of him, in the desperate way he touched me like he was afraid I'd evaporate. We stayed in that dusty corner of the library until a security guard's flashlight sent us scrambling apart. Julian's lips were swollen, his tie was completely undone, and there was a mark on my neck that I definitely didn't have an hour ago. As we left the library, his hand found mine automatically, but this time his grip was different, tighter, more insistent. "I'll walk you home," he said, and it didn't sound like an offer. "You don't have to. I want to." His fingers tightened on mine. "I need to know where you are, need to see you get there safely." It should have been sweet, protective even, but there was something in his voice, something sharp beneath the smoothness that made my skin prickle with awareness. This was new, this intensity, this need, and I was too in love with him to see it for what it was, a warning. Julian started showing up everywhere. At first, I thought it was coincidence. We had similar schedules, after all, and the campus wasn't that large. But by the second week, I couldn't deny the pattern. He was outside my economics class every Tuesday and Thursday, leaning against the wall with studied casualness, scrolling through his phone until I emerged. Then he'd fall into step beside me, his hand finding mine like it belonged there, and walk me to my next class, even when it took him completely out of his way. He was at the coffee shop I frequented every morning, already having ordered my usual, black coffee, no sugar, before I even arrived. "I was here anyway," he'd say with that smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. He was in the library during my study sessions, claiming the chair across from me with a possessiveness that made other students find somewhere else to sit. "Don't you have your own classes to attend?" I asked one afternoon, half joking, as he settled in across from me for the third day in a row. I rearranged my schedule. He said it like it was nothing, like reshaping his entire academic life around mine was perfectly reasonable. "Julian, I wanted to spend more time with you." His gaze locked onto mine with that intensity that made my stomach flip. "Is that a problem?" "No, but—" "Good." He reached across the table and caught my hand, bringing it to his lips. The kiss he pressed to my knuckles was soft, reverent, but his eyes never left mine. "Because I like knowing where you are. I like being close to you. I like—" His thumb traced across my palm. "I like having you in my sight." There was something in the way he said it that made heat pool low in my belly, even as a tiny voice in the back of my mind whispered, "Careful." But I ignored that voice, because having Julian's undivided attention was intoxicating, because the way he looked at me, like I was the only person in the world who mattered, made me feel powerful and wanted in a way I'd never experienced, because I was falling and I didn't want to stop. The shift became impossible to ignore during practice debate 2 weeks later. Marcus Chen, one of our teammates, had been assigned to work with me on the upcoming regional arguments. He was smart, friendly, always had insightful critiques. We'd been partners on projects before without issue. But that day, as Marcus leaned over to point out a flaw in my reasoning, his hand briefly touching my shoulder, I felt the air in the room change. I looked up to find Julian watching us from across the room, and the expression on his face made my blood run cold. It wasn't anger exactly. It was colder than that, more controlled. His dark eyes were fixed on Marcus's hand with the kind of focus a predator reserves for prey.
"Julian," our coach called, "your rebuttal?" He blinked, and the mask slid back into place. That charming smile, that smooth voice. "Of course, Professor Mitchell. My apologies." But when practice ended, Julian was at my side before I had even packed my notes. "Walk with me," he said, and it wasn't a request. We ended up in an empty classroom on the 3rd floor. Julian closed the door behind us with deliberate care, then turned to face me. "Are you close with Marcus?" His voice was conversational, too conversational. "He's a teammate. We've worked together before." "You touched him." His hand was on my shoulder for half a second. I didn't like the way he looked at you, the way he smiled, the way he felt comfortable putting his hands on you. "Julian, he's just a friend." "I don't care if he's been your friend since kindergarten. I don't care if he's the nicest person alive. When I see someone else touch you, I want to—" He cut himself off, jaw clenching. "Want to what?" His hand came up to cup my face, thumb brushing along my cheekbone with devastating gentleness that contrasted sharply with the steel in his voice. "Want to make it very clear that—"
You're taken, that you're mine, that anyone who thinks otherwise is making a dangerous mistake. My heart was hammering. His eyes were too dark, too intense, and the possessiveness in his voice should have scared me. Instead, it sent electricity down my spine. "I'm not a possession, Julian." "No." He leaned in until his lips brushed my ear. "You're something far more important than that. You're the only person who's ever truly seen me, the only one who's ever cared, and I'll be damned if I let anyone take that away." His teeth grazed my earlobe, and I shuddered. "You don't have to worry about Marcus." "Oh, I'm not worried." He pulled back just enough to look at me, and there was something almost frightening in the certainty of his smile. "Because tomorrow, he's going to mysteriously lose his research data for the regionals. A complete system failure. Very unfortunate." My stomach dropped. "What?" "And when that happens, you'll need a new partner, and I'll be right there." His fingers traced along my jaw, like I always am. "Julian, you can't!" "Can't what? Ensure that we work together? That I'm the one by your side?" His other hand found my waist, pulling me flush against him. "Watch me." "That's sabotage." "That's protection." He kissed me then, hard and claiming, swallowing whatever protest I might have made. When he pulled back, his voice had dropped to that dark register that made my knees weak. "You don't need him, Noah. You don't need anyone else. Just me." "This is—" "Obsessive?" His smile was sharp. "Possessive? Probably. But you made me this way." His thumb pressed against my lower lip. "You saved me. You saw me at my lowest and didn't turn away. You paid for me, sacrificed for me, chose me. Did you think I'd just be grateful? Did you think I'd be normal about that?" "I thought—" "You thought wrong." He kissed me again, softer this time, almost tender. "I love you, Noah. And when I love something, I hold on to it, tightly, completely, forever." The words should have been romantic, should have made my heart soar. And they did, but they also sent a chill down my spine, because I realized in that moment that Julian wasn't exaggerating. He meant every word. The boy who'd been taught his whole life that perfection meant control, that love was conditional, that weakness meant abandonment. He'd transferred all of that intensity, all of that desperate need for certainty onto me. I'd become his anchor, his certainty, his obsession. "Say it back," he demanded, his forehead pressed against mine. "Tell me you love me." I should have paused, should have addressed the concerning things he'd just admitted, should have set boundaries. But his hands were on me, and his voice was pleading beneath the command, and I was so desperately in love with him that nothing else seemed to matter. "I love you," I whispered. The sound he made was relief and triumph woven together. Then he was kissing me again and again, marking me with kisses along my jaw, my neck, anywhere he could reach. "Mine," he breathed against my skin. "Say it." Yours. Always. Always. It was a promise, a vow, a surrender. And as Julian held me in that empty classroom, his heartbeat racing against mine, I chose not to think about Marcus's impending sabotage, chose not to question the possessiveness that bordered on frightening, chose not to acknowledge the tiny voice screaming warnings in the back of my mind. I just held him back and pretended that love this intense could stay beautiful instead of becoming dangerous. I was wrong, of course, but I wouldn't realize that until much later. Marcus's laptop crashed the next morning. Complete hard drive failure. 3 months of research gone. He was devastated, scrambling to reconstruct what he could from backup notes and memory, but it was too late. The regional competition was in 2 weeks, and he'd never recover in time. Professor Mitchell reassigned him to research support and paired me with Julian instead. "Looks like we're partners," Julian said, sliding into the seat beside me with a smile that looked innocent to everyone else. But I could see the satisfaction in his eyes, the dark pleasure of a plan executed perfectly. "Julian," I said quietly, once the others had dispersed, "tell me you didn't—" "Tell me what? Ensure we work together? That I'm the one standing by your side?" His hand found my thigh under the table, fingers spreading possessively. "Can't I?" He leaned closer. His voice dropped to that smooth, dark register that made my pulse quicken despite everything. "I can, Noah, and I did, because you're mine to protect, mine to support, mine to stand beside." His fingers tightened on my leg. "Only mine." I should have pushed his hand away, should have confronted him properly, set clear boundaries, made him understand that sabotaging teammates wasn't acceptable. Instead, I let his hand stay, let his touch burn through my jeans, let the possessiveness in his voice send heat pooling in my stomach. What did that say about me? The next 2 weeks were intense. We practiced together every day, our arguments sharp and complementary, our rhythms perfectly synced. In debate, we were devastating, anticipating each other's thoughts, building on each other's points with surgical precision. Watching Julian work was mesmerizing. His brilliant mind, his commanding presence, that voice that could make any argument sound like divine truth. But outside of practice, things became complicated. Julian started leaving marks. The first time, I didn't even realize what he was doing. We were in his apartment, supposedly reviewing notes, but his mouth had found my neck, and rational thought had evacuated my brain. The kiss had been intense, his teeth grazing my pulse point, and I'd groaned and pulled him closer. It wasn't until the next morning that I saw the hickey, dark purple, deliberately placed just below my collar, where it would peek out if I moved wrong. "Julian," I'd said when I confronted him about it, "this is visible." "I know," he'd smiled, utterly unrepentant. "That's the point. People will see." "Good." He'd stepped closer, fingers tracing along my collar. "Let them see. Let them know you're taken, that you're loved, that you're mine." The possessiveness in his voice should have concerned me more than it did. But there was something intoxicating about being claimed so thoroughly, about being wanted with such singular intensity. Julian had been raised in a world of conditional love and transactional relationships. His attention, his devotion, his obsessive focus felt like the most valuable thing anyone had ever given me. So I let him mark me, let him kiss bruises into my skin in places only he would see, let him catalog every inch of me like I was territory he was claiming. And God help me, I loved it. The interrogations started subtly. "Who were you talking to after class?" "Just Sarah from economics. We're in a study group." A pause, then carefully casual. "How close are you with Sarah?" "She's a friend, Julian." "Just a friend?" "Yes, just a friend." But his hand would tighten on mine, his jaw would clench, and I could see him cataloging the information, filing it away. Then the questions became more frequent. "Where were you? I waited outside your class, but you'd already left. I went to the library to return some books. Which library, the main one or the humanities branch? Does it matter? I like to know where you are. Said so reasonably, so calmly, like it was the most natural thing in the world. And maybe it should have alarmed me. Maybe I should have recognized the slow tightening of his orbit around me, the way he needed to know my location, my schedule, everyone I spoke to. But he never yelled, never got angry. He just asked, calmly, persistently, with those dark eyes that looked at me like I was the only thing keeping him tethered to the world. How could I deny him that? After everything he'd been through? After the way he'd opened up to me, trusted me, loved me? So I told him everything, where I was going, who I'd be with, when I'd be back. And each answer seemed to settle something in him, ease some invisible tension in his shoulders. I told myself I was helping him feel secure. I told myself it was sweet that he cared so much. I told myself a lot of things in those weeks. The moment that should have shattered my denial came 3 days before regionals. We were in the debate hall, practicing late, just the two of us, the building empty, the campus dark beyond the windows. Julian was in his element, pacing as he delivered his closing argument, every gesture precise, every word perfectly calibrated. He was beautiful like this, powerful, commanding, that smooth voice washing over me like dark water, pulling me under. When he finished, he turned to me with that smile, the real one, not the mask he showed everyone else. Well, perfect, I said honestly. You're going to destroy them. We're going to destroy them. He crossed the room and pulled me up from my seat, hands framing my face. Together. Then he kissed me, and it started gentle but quickly turned desperate. His hands were in my hair, my shirt, pulling me closer like he wanted to crawl inside my skin. I kissed back just as fiercely, my fingers finding the buttons of his shirt. Noah, I need... His phone buzzed. Once, twice, 3 times in rapid succession. He ignored it, kissing down my neck, teeth grazing that sensitive spot that made me shudder. But the buzzing continued, insistent. You should, as I gasped, as his mouth found my collarbone, you should check that. Don't care. His hand slid under my shirt, warm against my skin. Nothing's more important than this, than you. But the buzzing wouldn't stop. Finally, cursing, he pulled away and grabbed his phone. I watched his expression change as he read the messages. Something dark flickered across his face. What is it? Alex Thompson. His voice had gone flat, cold. Alex was another debater, friendly and talented. We'd chatted a few times. What about him? He wants to know if you're free tomorrow. Says he has an interesting proposition for you about a summer internship. Julian's grip on his phone tightened until his knuckles went white. He's been messaging you all day apparently, wondering why you haven't responded. My stomach sank. I haven't checked my messages since this morning. I was with you.
He called you brilliant. Said he can't wait to work more closely with you. Each word was precisely enunciated, carefully controlled, but I could hear the rage simmering beneath. Tell me, Noah, how close is Alex Thompson trying to get? It's just about an internship, is it? He stepped closer, and there was something dangerous in his eyes now, something sharp beneath the smoothness, because from where I'm standing, it sounds like he's trying to take what's mine. I'm not... You're not what? Mine? His hand shot out and grabbed my wrist, pulling me close. We've established that you are, multiple times, in multiple ways. His other hand slid up to grip the back of my neck, possessive and sure. So why is another man messaging you, calling you brilliant, trying to create opportunities to be alone with you? Julian, you're being paranoid. Am I? His laugh was bitter. Or am I simply aware that everyone who sees you wants you, that your brilliance, your kindness, your... His grip tightened. That everything I love about you is visible to everyone else too. That doesn't mean... Respond to him. It wasn't a request. What? Take out your phone. Respond to Alex Thompson. Tell him you're not interested. Tell him you're with someone. Tell him—" His voice dropped dangerously low. "Tell him you're taken and he needs to back off." My heart was pounding. This was too far. This was controlling and possessive and wrong. "No." Julian froze. "No? No, I'm not going to let you dictate who I talk to or how I respond to professional opportunities." I pulled my wrist from his grip. "This is crossing a line." For a moment, he just stared at me. Then something in his expression cracked. "You're right." His voice shook slightly. "You're right. I'm sorry." He pressed his palms to his eyes. "Fuck. I'm sorry. I know I'm being— Julian, I can't help it." He looked at me, and the raw pain in his eyes made my chest ache. "The thought of losing you makes me feel like I'm drowning, like I can't breathe. You're the only good thing in my life, Noah, the only person who's ever—" His voice broke. "I know I'm too much. I know I'm suffocating you, but I don't know how to stop. I don't know how to love you less intensely." And just like that, my anger evaporated, because he looked so lost, so desperate, like the boy I'd found crying on the storage room floor, vulnerable and breaking. I stepped forward and pulled him into my arms. He came willingly, pressing his face into my neck, his whole body shaking. "I'm not going anywhere," I promised. "Alex's internship doesn't change anything. You don't have to be afraid." "Promise me." His arms tightened around me. "Promise you won't leave me for someone else, someone easier, someone less." "I promise." I held him tighter. "I choose you, Julian, every time, only you." He pulled back just enough to kiss me, and it was desperate and claiming and full of the same dark intensity that seemed to characterize everything between us now. "I love you," he whispered against my lips. "I love you so much it scares me." "I love you too." "Then be mine, only mine, always mine." "Always," I promised, and I meant it, even as a small voice in the back of my mind whispered that this wasn't healthy, that his jealousy was escalating, that the beautiful boy I'd saved was becoming something darker, more dangerous. But I silenced that voice, because when he looked at me like he was my entire world, how could I possibly walk away? Chapter 7. The Sabotage. We won regionals, destroyed the competition actually. Julian and I were perfectly synchronized, our arguments building on each other with devastating precision. When the judges announced our victory, the whole team erupted in celebration. But I only had eyes on Julian. He was radiant in victory, that genuine smile lighting up his face, making him look younger, less burdened. When our eyes met across the room, he mouthed, "We did it," and my heart swelled. The team went out to celebrate that night, everyone in high spirits. Julian stuck to my side like he was magnetically attached, his hand finding mine under the table, his thigh pressed against mine. "You were incredible," he murmured in my ear, his breath warm. "We were incredible," I corrected. "No." His hand squeezed mine. "You were the star. I just made sure everyone could see you shine." It should have been sweet, but there was something in the way he said it, like ensuring I shined meant keeping everyone else in the dark, that made unease prickle down my spine. Alex Thompson showed up halfway through the celebration, congratulating everyone enthusiastically. When it got to me, his smile was warm. "Noah, brilliant work today. Seriously, that closing argument was—" He shook his head admiringly. "Hey, did you get my messages about the summer internship? I really think you'd be perfect for—" "He's not interested." Julian's voice cut through the conversation like a blade. Alex blinked. "Oh, I said he's not interested." His hand had moved to the back of my neck, possessive and territorial. "Noah has other plans for the summer, with me."
This was news to me, but before I could say anything, Julian was pulling me up from my seat. "Excuse us," he said smoothly, and guided me toward the exit. Once we were outside, I pulled away from his grip. "What the hell was that?" "What was what?" "You can't just—" "Julian, that was rude. He was being friendly." "He was trying to get you alone for an entire summer." Julian's jaw was tight. Away from me, in some internship where he'd be your mentor and have unlimited access to you. It's a professional opportunity. It's a threat. He stepped closer, backing me against the restaurant's brick wall. Don't you see? Everyone wants you, Noah. Everyone sees how brilliant you are, how kind, how... His hand came up to cup my face. They all want what's mine. I'm not a possession. No, you're something far more precious than that. His thumb traced my lower lip. You're my salvation, my anchor, the only thing standing between me and the abyss, and I will not, his voice hardened, I will not let anyone take you away from me. The intensity in his eyes should have frightened me. The possessiveness should have sent me running. Instead, I found myself pulling him into a kiss. Because beneath the obsession, beneath the jealousy, I could still see the broken boy from the storage room, could still feel the desperation of someone who'd never been loved unconditionally, who didn't know how to hold on to good things without crushing them. I told myself I could fix him, could love him enough that he'd feel secure. I told myself a lot of stupid things. The next morning, Alex Thompson was removed from the debate team. Academic dishonesty, the official notice said, plagiarism in a term paper, immediate suspension from all team activities pending investigation. I knew it was impossible. I'd seen Alex's work. He was meticulous, honest to a fault. And when I confronted Julian about it in his apartment that afternoon, he didn't even try to deny it. You did this, I said, my voice flat. You fabricated evidence against him. Julian was sitting on his couch, looking completely at ease. I protected us. You ruined his academic career. I ensured he wouldn't be a problem. He stood and crossed to me, utterly unrepentant. He wanted to take you away from me for months, Noah. Months where he'd be influencing you, getting close to you, making you see him as what? A colleague? A mentor? God forbid I have professional relationships outside of you. You have me. His hands gripped my shoulders. I'm your partner in debate. I'm your... His voice softened. I'm your everything, aren't I? That's not the point. Then what is the point? His grip tightened. That I'm supposed to sit back and watch other people try to steal you? Watch them create opportunities to separate us? Watch them... His voice cracked. Watch them take the only good thing I have? And there it was, that vulnerability, that desperation, the boy who'd cried in my arms, terrified of losing everything. Julian, I said more gently, you can't hurt people just because you're afraid of losing me.
Can't I? His laugh was hollow. Watch me, Noah. Anyone who tries to take you from me, anyone who threatens what we have, I'll destroy them. Utterly, completely. He pulled me closer, his forehead pressing against mine. I know it's wrong. I know I should be better, but I'm not. I'm selfish and obsessive, and I'd rather burn the whole world down than lose you. My heart was pounding. This was the moment I should walk away, should recognize that this had gone too far, should save us both from the toxic spiral we were in. But his hands were gentle on my face. His eyes were pleading, and beneath all the darkness, I could still see the person I'd fallen in love with. Promise me you'll stop, I said. Promise me no more sabotage, no more hurting people. I promise, he said immediately. Too immediately. I should have pushed, should have demanded concrete changes, actual proof. But he was kissing me then, soft and sweet, murmuring apologies against my lips, and I wanted so desperately to believe him that I let myself be convinced. I love you, he whispered. I love you so much it makes me insane, but I'll be better. For you, I'll be better. I love you too, I whispered back. And I did. God help me, I did. Even as I chose to ignore the red flags, even as I rationalized his behavior, even as I became complicit in his obsession by staying, by accepting, by loving him anyway. because walking away from Julian felt like walking away from someone drowning. And I'd already made the decision, that rainy night on the storage room floor, that I would save him, even if it meant drowning with him. "I want you to meet my parents." Julian said it casually one Saturday morning as we lay tangled together in his bed. His fingers were tracing lazy patterns on my chest, his body warm against mine. I blinked at him. "What?" "My parents. I want you to meet them." He propped himself up on one elbow, looking down at me. "I've told them about you, about us. My mother wants to have you over for dinner." "I thought your father has been an ass?" "Yes, but he's also realized that losing me would be worse than accepting that I'm in love with a man." His smile was sharp. "Turns out I'm his only heir. That carries weight, even in his bigoted mind." "Julian, say yes." His hand slid up to cup my face. "Let me show you off to them. Let me prove that you're not just—" He paused, something vulnerable flickering in his eyes. "That you're permanent. That this is permanent." How could I say no to that? The Castellane estate was exactly what I'd expected. Sprawling, ostentatious, dripping with old money that survived bankruptcy through strategic asset protection and family trusts. Julian's hand was tight in mine as we walked up the marble steps. "You okay?" I asked quietly. "Fine." But his jaw was tense. "Just remember, my father will try to intimidate you. Don't let him." The door opened to reveal a woman who could only be Julian's mother. Same dark eyes, same sharp cheekbones, but with a warmth her son rarely showed strangers. "Noah!" She pulled me into an unexpected hug. "I've heard so much about you. Please, come in." Dinner started cordially enough. Julian's mother asked about my studies, my background, my plans after graduation. His father was mostly silent, assessing me with cold calculation. But Julian was performing. He was charming, attentive, playing the role of devoted boyfriend with such precision that I almost believed this was simple, normal, healthy. His hand found mine under the table. He laughed at my jokes. He told stories that painted us as the perfect couple. "Noah saved my academic career," he said at one point, his voice warm. "When I thought I'd have to drop out, he refused to let me give up. He's been my anchor." His mother smiled. His father grunted what might have been approval. And I felt the trap closing. Because this wasn't just about introducing me. This was about cementing my place in his life, making me inextricable, ensuring that even his family saw me as essential. After dinner, Julian's father pulled him aside for a private conversation. His mother led me to the terrace, where we looked out over the manicured gardens. "He loves you very much," she said quietly. "I love him too." "Good, because Julian doesn't do anything halfway. When he loves completely, obsessively even." A pause. "His father was the same way with me." "Was?" "Is," she corrected. "But I learned to navigate it, learned that sometimes love that intense can be beautiful, and sometimes," she looked at me meaningfully, "sometimes it can be a prison with velvet bars." Before I could respond, Julian appeared in the doorway. "Ready to go?" he asked, but his eyes were on his mother, something sharp in his gaze. In the car ride home, his hand was possessive on my thigh. "What did my mother say to you?" "Just that you love intensely." "I do." His grip tightened. "Does that bother you?" "No," I said, and watched his shoulders relax. It should have bothered me. His mother's warning should have resonated. But when we got back to his apartment and he pulled me close, whispering, "They love you too now, you know what that means," I just kissed him instead of asking. "It means your family," he murmured against my lips. "It means you're woven into every part of my life, my present, my future." His hands framed my face. "You can never leave me now, Noah, not when you're part of everything." "I'm not going anywhere." "Promise?"
Promise. He kissed me then, deep and claiming, and I let myself drown in it. Let myself pretend that his mother's words were just concern, not prophecy.
Let myself believe that love this consuming could stay beautiful instead of becoming suffocating. The breaking point came on a Thursday. I was in the library working on my thesis when my phone buzzed with a message from Sarah, my economics study partner. "Hey, can we meet up to go over the final project? I have questions about the regression analysis." I typed back, "Sure, coffee shop at 4. Then I sent Julian a message letting him know I'd be studying with Sarah. A courtesy, I told myself, not a requirement. His response came immediately. "Who's Sarah?" "Economic study group, I've mentioned her before." "Why does she need to see you alone?" "It's not alone, it's a public coffee shop, and we're working on a project." 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. "I'll come with you." "Julian, that's not necessary. I want to meet her." "That's weird, it's just a study session." "Then it shouldn't matter if I'm there." And suddenly, I was angry, properly, righteously angry. "No, you don't get to insert yourself into every aspect of my life. I'm meeting Sarah alone. End of discussion." I turned my phone to silent and tried to focus on my work. An hour later, Sarah sat down across from me at the coffee shop, and I tried to ignore the prickling awareness at the back of my neck. We'd been working for maybe 20 minutes when I saw him. Julian, sitting 3 tables away, laptop open in front of him, looking for all the world like he just happened to be there. My blood turned to ice. Sarah followed my gaze. "Friend of yours?" Something like that. I stood abruptly. "I'll be right back." Julian looked up as I approached, his expression perfectly innocent. "Noah, what a coincidence." "Cut the bullshit." I kept my voice low. "You're following me." "I was in the area. You're tracking me, aren't you?" The realization hit like a physical blow. "That's how you always know where I am. You put something on my phone." His mask slipped, just for a second, but I saw it. The calculation, the guilt, the stubborn refusal to apologize. "It's for your safety." "It's a violation." I was shaking now, with rage or fear or heartbreak. I couldn't tell. "You're spying on me." "I'm protecting you." "From what? From having a normal fucking life without you hovering over every interaction?" He stood, and suddenly we were too close, his voice dropping to that dangerous register. "You don't understand, Noah. When I don't know where you are, when I can't see you, when you're with other people, I can't breathe, Noah. I can't think. The fear that something will take you away. So you decided to become that something." I laughed bitterly. "Don't you see? You're not protecting me, Julian. You're suffocating me." "I'm loving you." "No, this isn't love. Love doesn't sabotage people's careers. Love doesn't track locations and interrogate and try to control every aspect of someone's life." My voice cracked. "Love doesn't turn into a prison." He flinched like I'd struck him. "Noah, I need space." I stepped back. "I need time to think, away from you." The look on his face was pure devastation. "You're leaving me." "I'm taking a break." "No." His hand shot out and grabbed my wrist. "No, you promised. You promised you wouldn't leave." "You're hurting me." I looked pointedly at where his fingers dug into my skin. He released me immediately, horror flooding his face. I'm sorry, I didn't mean—" His voice broke. "Please, please don't go. I'll be better. I'll stop the tracking. I'll give you space. You said that before. After Alex. You promised then too. This time I mean it." "I don't believe you." And saying it felt like tearing my own heart out. "Because you don't think you're doing anything wrong. You think your fear justifies everything. But it doesn't, Julian. It doesn't." I turned to walk away, and his voice stopped me. "I'll destroy myself without you." I looked back. There he was, that beautiful, broken boy, with tears streaming down his face, looking exactly like he had that night in the storage room. And God, I wanted to go back to him, wanted to hold him, fix him, save him. But I'd finally realized the truth. I couldn't save someone who was drowning if they insisted on pulling me under. "Then maybe," I said softly,
You need to learn how to save yourself." Then I walked away, and it was the hardest thing I'd ever done. I lasted 3 days. 3 days of ignoring his calls, of deleting his increasingly desperate messages, of pretending the ache in my chest wasn't killing me. 3 days before I realized something crucial. I didn't want to lose him.
Yes, his behavior was problematic. Yes, he needed help. Yes, the obsession was unhealthy. But beneath all of that, there was still the boy I'd fallen in love with. The brilliant, vulnerable, desperately loyal person who'd chosen me, who'd opened himself up completely, who loved me with an intensity most people never experienced. And maybe we could find a middle ground. Maybe with boundaries and therapy and actual communication, we could turn this dangerous intimacy into something sustainable. Maybe I was being an idiot, but I'd never been good at walking away from people who needed me. So, on the 4th day, I went to his apartment. He answered the door looking like he hadn't slept. His eyes were red-rimmed, his hair disheveled, his clothes rumpled. When he saw me, his expression crumbled. "Noah, I have conditions," I said before he could speak. "If we're going to do this, if we're going to be together, things have to change." He nodded frantically. Anything you want." "Therapy, for both of us, together and separate." "Yes." "Complete transparency. No more tracking, no more sabotage, no more lying." "I promise." "And space. I need to be able to have friends, colleagues, a life outside of you. You need to trust me." "I will. I'll do better. His voice broke. Please come back to me." I stepped inside and pulled him into my arms. He collapsed against me, shaking, clutching me like I was the only thing keeping him alive. "I love you. I love you so much. I'm sorry I'm broken. I'm sorry I don't know how to love you without also wanting to possess you. I'm sorry." "I know." I held him tighter. "I know, and we're going to figure this out, together." He pulled back just enough to kiss me, and it was desperate and grateful and still far too intense. But it was also familiar. Home. "I'll be better," he promised between kisses. "I'll prove I can be what you need." "Just be yourself," I said. "The real you. Not the perfect mask, not the obsessive lover. Just Julian." He looked at me with those dark eyes, and I saw the war inside him, the desire to be better fighting against the fear of losing me, the need for control battling with the love that made him vulnerable. "I don't know if I know how," he admitted. "Then we'll learn together." It wasn't a perfect resolution. It wasn't even a healthy one, probably. But it was ours. And sometimes, love isn't about finding someone without demons. Sometimes, it's about being willing to face those demons together.
6 months later, Julian and I stood backstage at the National Debate Championships, his hand tight in mine. We'd come so far, not just in debate, but in us. Therapy had helped. Dr. Morrison specialized in attachment disorders and had given Julian tools to manage his anxiety, his need for control, had helped him understand that his father's conditional love had warped his understanding of relationships, had helped me understand that my savior complex wasn't healthy either, that loving someone didn't mean sacrificing every boundary. We still had hard days, days when Julian's jealousy flared, when his need to know my location became compulsive, days when I had to remind him, firmly but gently, that I chose him every day, but I chose myself too. But we also had good days, days when Julian could watch me talk to other people without calculating threat levels, days when his love felt like warmth instead of chains. Today was somewhere in between. "You're going to be brilliant," Julian murmured, his thumb tracing circles on my palm. "You always are." "We're going to be brilliant," I corrected. He smiled, that real smile I'd become addicted to. Together. Always. We won. Of course we won. Afterward, as everyone celebrated, Julian pulled me aside, led me through the venue's hallways until we found it, a storage room, dusty and dim, eerily similar to the one where this had all begun. "Remember this?" he asked, closing the door behind us. How could I forget? He crossed to me slowly, deliberately, until we were chest to chest. His hand came up to cup my face, and his eyes were intense but not frightening, loving but not suffocating. "I was a wounded bird once," he said softly, "broken on the floor, drowning in my own fear. I remember. And you saved me, held me, made me believe I could be more than my father's disappointment. Julian, but I need you to understand something." His other hand found my waist, pulling me closer. "I'm not wounded anymore. I'm not weak. I've built myself back up, with your help, yes, but also with my own strength." "I know." And now his smile was sharp, possessive, but tempered with something softer. "Now I'm the bird, Noah. I'm the cage. But," he leaned in, lips brushing my ear, "but you have the key. You've always had the key." My breath caught. "I'll never trap you," he promised, "but I'll also never stop wanting to keep you close, to protect you, to be the first person you turn to." His hand slid up to tangle in my hair. "I'm yours, completely and obsessively, but you're free to choose me every day, or to walk away." "I'm not walking away."
No? His smile widened. "Then let me ask you properly." He pulled back and, oh God, dropped to one knee. My heart stopped. "Noah Hayes," he pulled a small box from his pocket. "You saved me when I was at my lowest. You loved me when I was at my worst. You've seen every broken part of me and decided I was worth keeping." His voice shook slightly. "Will you marry me? Will you choose me every day for the rest of our lives?" The ring was simple, elegant, perfect, and I didn't even hesitate. "Yes!" He stood and kissed me hard, and I tasted triumph and relief and love all woven together. When we pulled apart, he slid the ring onto my finger with shaking hands. "Mine," he whispered. "Yours," I agreed. "Always?" "Always." And it was a promise, a vow, a choice. Because loving Julian meant accepting all of him. The brilliance and the darkness, the devotion and the obsession, the man who'd fight the world for me, and the man who sometimes needed to be fought against. It meant boundaries and therapy and constant, careful negotiation of our intense, complicated love. It meant never being bored, never being alone, never wondering if I was wanted. It meant being seen, completely and constantly, by someone who loved me with terrifying intensity. Jan 18. As we left that storage room, his hand in mine, the ring heavy on my finger, I caught our reflection in a darkened window. We looked perfect together, beautiful even. And maybe other people would look at us and see red flags, see obsession disguised as love, possession dressed up as devotion. But we saw each other, truly, completely. And in the end, maybe that was enough. Maybe love didn't have to be easy to be real. Maybe it just had to be chosen. Every single day. Together. The end.